I was wondering if you, and the question I'm going to ask you, and I've seen this not just this game, but for the Big Ten in general. What did you think about the officiating for that game? I thought it was
Hmm.
terrible. And I've seen some
Terrible
games that I've
officiating.
rewatched
Yep.
this year that were just terrible. Like the Maryland, if you rewatch the Michigan Maryland game, they didn't make bad calls. They just didn't call anything. The whole game, there were so many things missed. And on both sides. I'm a Michigan fan, but on both sides. I mean, like the things by Michigan and things by Maryland's formations were like there were so many illegal formations or men downfield, illegal men downfield. Rewatching that, and this game I thought was terrible.
All right. So you get to a number of things here because most fans, when they bring up officiating and they're being neutral, they're not saying, my team got screwed, but they're just saying that was a horribly officiated game. Typically go to two areas, and they go to defensive pass interference, whether they think it was too ticky-tack or that they think that guys got away with murder out there. And then the other one would be offensive holding, particularly on pass plays, that the offensive line was holding and getting away with holds, or that they were being, again, too ticky-tack in calling the holds. That's typically where we go with those because those are judgment calls. Now, in terms of missing technical calls, that's what you're pointing out right here. That's a technical call. If the officials do not recognize that's an illegal formation, and which basically means there's a few things that come up.
5 guys in the backfield, like tight ends back when the tight end should be on the line and things like that. Yeah.
There's the first thing you learn when understanding football rules is that the formations, they're going way back a zillion years, determined that players in the backfield are not necessarily what we consider as football fans players in the backfield, meaning like they're tailbacks. Just anybody off the line of scrimmage is in the backfield, and you have to have at least 6 players on the line of scrimmage. That's why we see it a number of times where wide receivers get it wrong, where they're illegally in formation.
A lot of people don't understand.
And obviously the only guys that can go out for a pass have to be either in the backfield or they have to be the end men on the line of scrimmage. So you're saying you saw those things. I wasn't watching the formations intently to know if they were missing calls like that, but I'm saying I would be pretty surprised and appalled if they were missing that.
Well, there was a couple of them. I was like, there was 5 men in the backfield and they ran the same play twice where there's 5 men in the backfield. 2 of the receivers were off. There's a quarterback and then the tight end was back. And I was like, those are things that you see that tells the defense who's eligible and who's not too. I mean, people might think it's like, it's just a formational thing. It doesn't make, but when you're the defense, that tells you who's eligible. It's not like when you're playing backyard ball and you're tackling backyard ball and you raise your hand if you're eligible or something, or if you're eligible or something like that. But yeah, but this game, man, I thought it's now when I looked at this game, I didn't notice formation, but I usually notice that if I rewatch a game because I got a little bit more time. But this game, I noticed that last interception, they were calling ticky-tacky like offensive and defensive or offensive pass interference, I think, this game. And in that last interception, the DB like pushes the wide receiver like in the back and pushes off from to get to the interception. I mean, did it? That's what I saw when I watched it. And I thought that was kind of like the whole night. There was a couple people in the comments I think Ralph Wolf was mentioning that he thought that Rutgers should have been 24-0 in that game if it wasn't for bad calls. So what did you see?
Yeah, I got to say I didn't really see any of that. I'm not saying that it wasn't there. I'm saying I watched the game, had the game on, watched the plays, kept track of, who's doing what, but I wasn't watching the game to that extent to have that type of analysis of the game. I didn't even see the interception more than once. I saw it happen. I was setting up here, saw it happen, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen the replay of the interception to see. I do think that Trey Palmer, if you're alluding as well to the Trey Palmer offensive pass interference, I thought that was a good call. Threw the guy down.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
You said
but
something about offensive
there's
pass
yeah,
interference. I thought
but there was I think
that
they
was the
called
play we
like
were
4 or
talking
5
about.
of them. I think they called like 4 or 5 offensive pass interferences that game.
4 or 5?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, at least 4.
Okay.
But anyways, that's what I wanted to shout out at you. I just wondered what your thoughts were on it. So that's all.
Well,
That's all I
I
had
will
for you.
say that the last 2 weeks, Nebraska has played in just first of all, they're a penalized team, period. They've been a penalized team under Scott Frost. And Indiana and Nebraska totaled like a million penalties last week. Some ridiculous, like more penalties, I think, in the first half. I don't know where it landed at the conclusion of the game, but they had more penalties in the first half than any game in like 5 years or something like that.
Really?
And I see that Nebraska and Rutgers, 18 penalties in this game, 9 apiece.
That's an interesting stat. That's not what you want when you're a coach of a team. That's for sure.
No, I heard a coach make the comment the other day. I'm trying to think who that was. That he likes his team to be not the least penalized or the most penalized because he thinks that there's a lot of penalties that are out of aggression, that if you play an aggressive style of play, you're going to get some penalties. So he has no issue with his team having some penalties. So he doesn't want his team to be the least penalized team in the nation. But he says we should be in kind of the upper third in least penalties. And that's a good sign for that coach, whoever said that.
Yeah. What did you think of? Did you see that thrown out of bounds play?
Yes, I don't like that.
I thought that was a little
call.
I thought, man, that was so quick. I mean, they were just going out, and I think he was just finishing his motion. But
so
I don't think he even threw him down. I think he was just in the middle of trying to get him out of bounds.
So from the standpoint of these officials, have to understand the context of the game. So there are the officials, and this is probably most of them, that just simply know this is the rule book, and I call the play. If it's the first play of the game, I'm going to call that. If it's 28-27 and the ball's at the 3-yard line and the pass is in the end zone to decide the game, I'm calling that exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that from the standpoint of talking about actual football plays, clipping, holding, pass interference, actual what I consider plays that are infractions within the play. But when you talk about taunting, unsportsmanlike conduct, a late hit, a play out of bounds like that, those are more periphery calls or non-play calls, false starts, that sort of thing. And I know you can differentiate those last two as well. So for me, I would tend to evaluate the game in context. So for example, if I saw a lot of jawing and taunting's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a call. It's a 15-yard penalty. It's a big deal. Okay, it can really hurt a team. It can end a drive, elongate a drive. It's a 15-yard penalty. If it's the first quarter and I'm an official who's saying, this has got the potential to be a rough game, a physical game, out of control game, we could have some issues here. I'm calling that. I'm calling it by the letter. It's not my rule book. It's the rule book. It's not my decision to determine whether taunting should be in the rule book or not. So I'm going to enforce that. And I also want to set a tone for the rest of the game. Communicate to the players, this is the way we're going to officiate the game. This is the way you need to behave yourself during the game. But as we saw in Purdue-Syracuse a couple of weeks ago, I thought this was horrible that Purdue scores with 45 seconds left in the game. Great game. 45 seconds left in the game. Purdue scores. There is minimal jawing between a Purdue player, Payne Durham, the tight end who scored the lead touchdown, and the Syracuse player. And I couldn't even watching it on TV, I couldn't even determine who started what. It was just kind of like a push, like not a push, like I'm throwing you 5 yards, like a chest bump and some jawing back and forth. Okay, flag comes out, 15 yards. And then Jeff Brom steps off the sideline, doesn't do anything that's not done several times by any coach in any game. They throw another flag on him. So the next thing you know, you're changing a complete ball game because you're taking 30 yards off the kickoff and you back Purdue up to the 10-yard line to make a kickoff. Syracuse runs it back to like the Purdue 40. You have set them up for the game-winning touchdown, and that's what happened. And I just thought, context, people, context.
I completely agree. And I was gonna, before you went into that, I was gonna ask you if that's where you're going, because I'm in complete agreement with you. I mean, if it's like a Michigan Ohio State game and there's chippiness and you want to set the tone, but if it's a game that's been playing clean and it's just a contact, like in that game, for instance,
we want the players to decide the game. Now, if it's the game-winning touchdown pass and we know that there was a rusher who broke through the line and the center just grabbed him by the collar and it's a hold, call the hold, call the game. I would rather have not have a penalty decide the game, but still, if it's an egregious penalty and it was committed, call it. But when it comes to taunting and all those unsportsmanlike plays, like what we saw again, the sideline, if we're hurting football players by throwing them on the ground, then we better go to flag football. So I just hated to see that.
I would agree. That taunting, and to me, taunting is almost like one of the worst officiated calls in college football, because I see things all the time. I'm like, how is this not taunting? And that is, I'm not on the field. I don't hear the guys, but I mean, you can see people making gestures. I've seen people stand over a quarterback and almost just, celebrate over the guy. And then I've seen, guys make a little gesture in the end zone and get the taunting flag,
I would have told you probably 25 or 30 years ago, the 25-year-old me would have told you, I hate the taunting penalty. Get rid of it. These guys are tough enough to be able to take it. They're playing football. But I don't like taunting. It's different from celebrating. Celebrate, sack the quarterback, turn around, get away from him, celebrate with your teammates, throw your hands up, jump up and down, do whatever you want to do. Go into your little dance, as long as it's minimal. I am sick of seeing in the NFL every time somebody makes any kind of play, everybody's got to rush down the field into the end zone and take pictures and do, pose for photographs and all this other business. And it's like, you made an interception off a deflected pass that was right to you. You didn't do anything that special. Great for you. You caught the football. You made it. It's just
some class,
ridiculous. But I don't draw the line, because at a certain point, these guys, they watch film, they lift weights, they run all year, they hit each other. To score a touchdown is a big deal. Most guys aren't Bryce Young, where they throw 45 touchdown passes. Getting into the end zone is very difficult for the majority of these guys, and they do it once or twice a year, not 45 times a year. So it's a big deal. Let them celebrate. But the thing about the taunting is, most of the time, the play that leads up to the taunting, whoever, quote, won that play, got the better of the other player. It's kind of an unfair situation. It's usually not, here's a running back coming through the hole, here's a linebacker that's got him squared up, and who's the better man? Then, hey, you know what? I don't like taunting, but you've got some leeway to taunt there because you sized him up and it was man on man and you nailed him. Versus there's a receiver on the sideline, the ball's being thrown. You'll see sometimes the safety will just come out of nowhere and just lay him out. and stand over him. Well, that receiver had no chance. He's focused on the ball. He's
Yeah.
not in a physical contact situation. You are. Anybody could make that play, and you're standing over him like you did something special. You didn't do anything special. You're not the better man, the bigger man, the tougher guy.
Yeah.
He was waiting on the football.
Yeah. The quarterback
anyway, not
to
into a full taunting thing, because I could go on about some of these things. But of course, that's why we're here.